Hi everyone, I'm Tara Robertson and I'm delighted to be speaking to you on Gubbi Gubbi land today while I attend a conference in Noosa, Australia. Today I want to give you a quick overview on some research that I've conducted quite recently in a project that asked about responsibility for quantum technology and quantum science in Australia. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm a science communication researcher and practitioner. My research falls into three broad categories. It looks at the communication of science and technology futures, so HYPE, diversity in science communication, mostly looking at queering SciComm or the involvement of LGBTIQA+ people, and of course, responsible innovation for quantum technology, which is the topic that we're interested in today. So responsible innovation, if you're not familiar with it, encourages us to explore and imagine different forms of responsibility. Responsibility in research and innovation can include the integration of ethical concerns and public values in research and technology design, avoiding harm, and supporting human rights. The way we typically motivate these conversations around the need for responsible innovation is by providing examples of technology gone wrong or irresponsible research. But I think that this way of communicating the need for responsible innovation can have unfortunate side effects. For instance, it can alienate very researchers and innovators that we want to engage in order to promote responsible design and use of, in this case, quantum technology. So in this project, what I wanted to do is find out how people in quantum science and tech were thinking about responsibility and how they imagined quantum technology would impact the world. I spoke with 20 people working in the sector. They were researchers, entrepreneurs, industry partners looking to adopt quantum technology, and people working in Australian defence and defence industries. I asked them to describe how they imagined responsibility for quantum technology and to identify the risks posed by and for the second quantum revolution. I'm going to focus in on that conversation of risk today, but I'm very happy to share the preprint of the paper with anyone who's interested. So more than 30 themes around risk emerged from these discussions. In analysing those, I consolidated them into 6 broad categories, which I'll introduce you to now. The first category was security and access. So this mostly included concerns around national security challenges that were posed by dual-use quantum technologies and a corresponding need to maintain some sort of sovereign ownership of the technology. This need for security was complicated by a desire to also prevent inequity of distribution and access. So really posing a question of how do we balance security with a desire to provide access to quantum technologies. The second category was clarity around boundaries. So at this point in the development of quantum tech, we've got this distinct gap when it comes to regulation and standards for quantum technologies. This heightens uncertainty for industry in considering adopting quantum tech because we can't yet answer the question of what regulations and standards will look like. The third category was communication. This was chiefly centered around the problems posed by sensationalization or hype and worries that too much hype might cause a quantum winter. And quantum winter meaning a dip in funding and other kinds of social support. Interviewees also said that in general, quantum had a communication problem. And this was caused by the complexity of the field and the relative opacity of some of the conversations or themes that emerge in public conversations. In a similar vein, there was a lack of clear discussion around a specific type of ethics for a quantum. Our fourth category was focused in on the technology itself and concerns that the applications imagined for quantum science might not work in reality. Within this category, we also saw questions over whether the quantum sector was solving problems that people actually wanted solved. So kind of coming back to this idea of communication, interviewees really recognized a need for deeper stakeholder engagement as quantum technologies were being developed. Our fifth category was responsible conduct in research and translation. So specifically, interviewees thought about the question of individual accountability and the problem of how to ensure responsible conduct through training and other mechanisms. And finally, our sixth category was unknown future risk, which simply put was the question of what happens as we move from known knowns to unknown unknowns. How do we anticipate unforeseen impacts and create useful but flexible structures in the present to help us deal with them in the future? All of this sounds great, but what does it mean going forward? So the discussion of responsible innovation for quantum technologies is truly early yet. To understand the possibilities and meanings of responsible quantum, we need a conversation on responsible development and deployment of quantum technologies. In the interviews I conducted, people suggested that this conversation required an element of awareness of responsible innovation, responsible use, equitable use, and other relevant areas. They said that awareness of these ideas was the absolute minimum that we needed to achieve. And we don't just need researchers and policymakers, we don't just need researchers and innovators speaking about responsible quantum. We also need policymakers, regulators, and other key stakeholders to build their own language for this conversation. And finally, we need to consider what common or public good will be afforded by quantum tech. We need to find the answer to the question of what should we be doing to ensure the greatest global good is derived from these technologies? At the end of the day, while we may not know exactly what quantum technologies will look like right now, we can still prepare the tools and processes that we need to govern their design and use within our societies. And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.